This is Palmetto, Florida, located in Manatee County, Florida, part of the Bradenton, Sarasota metropolitan area. However, it's known to most people as Palmghetto. On today's video, we're going to talk about some positive and some negative things about Palmetto and also try to understand why it's so much more affordable than other places. First of all, I noticed a few houses for sale right now in Palmetto for less than $250,000. They're newer concrete block constructions. The first and most obvious things that I noticed about these properties is that they once recently flooded during the hurricanes because they're in storm surge areas. And two, they are in high crime areas, almost borderline very high crime areas. So the most obvious thing about Palmetto is that the locals don't like to hear it very much, but we call it Palmghetto in this area. On the internet, most people don't say Palmetto, they say Palmghetto. But if you say that to the people that live here, they do get offended. Now, I spent most of the day in Palmetto today Uber driving. I want to talk a little bit about my real life experiences here. Today was a particularly good day with all my passengers being positive and upbeat. We're now entering the off season in Florida, and this is the hardest time of the year for us locals to make money. And that's exactly why I ended up in Palmetto. See, most Uber drivers avoid Palmetto because of the bad reputation that it has. And thus, if you Uber drive here, you're probably going to get more passengers than anywhere else because, well, Uber drivers avoid this area. In fact, recently, about a month back, a taxi driver was robbed at gunpoint by his passenger here. And this is probably not the first time this has happened. Taxi drivers, Uber drivers know that this is a very dangerous area to work, particularly late at night, which I've done more than once, and it really is a scary place to Uber drive. Usually when you pick up somebody here late at night, you're almost wondering if they're going to hurt you, but the only thing you're not wondering is what they're up to, usually illegal activities. And I know that's difficult for the people that live here and use Uber for regular transportation, because the perception from the Uber driver is almost always the most accurate, which is to expect the absolute worst. And I know that's got to suck for the people that live here full time, that they have to deal with the reputation that this place has. But it isn't in vain that people call this place Palmghetto. It really has earned this horrible nickname. And as a Uber driver in this area, I would kind of know firsthand. Today, though, I got very pleasant people. I don't think I got that many tips at all. In fact, I think only one single person tipped me. And this is probably why Uber drivers avoid this area. Not only are you propense to not getting any tips from the people here, you're also really likely to end up getting scammed or even robbed by the people out here. So it's a very horrible notion to Uber drive in this area. If you're Uber driving here at night, you probably have a 1 in 3 chance that your passenger is moving the work. Yeah, they're moving the pack on Uber. And that's a horrible notion to think of, but realistically, when you're Uber driving here at night, you have a good 1 in 3 chance that the person reeks of herbal essence or they're clearly engaging in trafficking activities. And it's done blatantly. There's no concealment methods. These individuals live a life of crime, and this is just normal for them. This is just the way things happen. So for them, they'll even do the transactions in front of you. They'll talk on the phone. You know, they're not trying to hide it. For them, living a life of crime, it's just, that's what happens in Palmghetto. So it's very frustrating when you're an Uber driver and your passengers are blatantly engaging in illegal activities and just assuming that you're going to be okay with the fact that you're now part of this transaction for $5 on Uber. And let me remind you that I have never in my time Uber driving had anybody engaging in these activities tip, so it isn't like they appreciate what you're doing for them by not kicking them out for their illegal activities. So this area is kind of high crime, and that's probably why it garnishes the name Palmghetto. Particularly, trafficking is very common here. Homelessness is very common, and robbery is very common. Those are probably the three biggest crime concerns you have out here. And there's also a lot of finesse and scamming. So another problem that we've ran into while working in Palmetto is people trying to scam you. One good example would be a recent delivery that we did during a live stream where we delivered food to an individual and it went down uneventfully. So no problems. It was during a live stream. We got out, we delivered the food. The guy then went ahead and told Uber that I got into a physical altercation with him and that he needed his money refunded because I physically assaulted him. So he was trying to get his money returned by complaining about me, the driver, saying that we got into a fight over his food, a physical fight. Unfortunately for him, the whole thing was on dash cam. We were live streaming, so I just clipped it and sent it to Uber, and they probably closed his account. But this is just the type of behavior you unfortunately get when dealing with people out here. And of course, it isn't everybody. I had a guy that once gave me a $20 bill out here. So there's great people out here that are very generous. But unfortunately, it seems like in Palmetto, the hood rattery kind of outweighs the good tenfold probably. Now this apartment complex here is restricted or limited by income. A one-bedroom apartment here is around $1,200, but of course, not everybody qualifies. It's kind of like low-income housing, and just as the name suggests, you get a lot of problematic passengers out of these apartments, but I've also got some great passengers out of these apartments. On this particular day, I brought somebody here, and they were the only person that tipped me all day. They gave me a $5 tip. The reviews for these apartments are not stellar either. On Google Maps, they're currently rated at a 3.2, which is horrifically low. A review from 9 years ago said that they moved into the apartments and within the first week, they got robbed because apparently there was a window that didn't close and apparently somebody knew about it and decided to go breaking in and robbing their stuff the moment they moved in. So imagine you move into an apartment complex and within like the first or second week, you get robbed. That's unpleasant. Now we're about to start heading south on 60th Avenue East, and this is technically Ellington, but I believe Ellington, Rubonia, Memphis, all these are unincorporated areas. So if you move to Palmetto, you will get a Palmetto address, but if you move to, let's say, Rubonia, that's an unincorporated area, so it'll say Palmetto on your driver's license. For example, I live in Lakewood Ranch, but I have a Bradenton address because Lakewood Ranch is unincorporated. So this is an unincorporated area known as Ellington. And as you're driving through here, you can see there's big, beautiful houses. And these big, beautiful houses are considerably more affordable than in, let's say, Fort Myers or Naples. So there's definitely a monetary advantage to buying a large home here. Now, one of my Uber passengers just today was telling me that his house had 4 feet of water inside. And even though it's been about a year since the hurricane, he said the insurance company is just now getting ready to evaluate his case almost a year later. But his house was in West Palmetto, and that area did receive a lot of flooding. So what I've noticed is that the areas where you see these houses that are $250,000 for sale right now in Palmetto, or Rubonia, Ellington, anything in the Palmetto area, basically north of the Manatee River in Manatee County. These are properties that for the most part flooded. And on top of that, these can be very high crime rate areas. So you get what you pay for. And in the case of this area of Palmetto, Ellington, Memphis, Rubonia, everything basically in the area of Palmetto is that, it's more affordable, but there's also some serious disadvantages. For me, I would think that traffic congestion has to be at the top of the reasons why I would never want to live here. See, being north of the Manatee River means that you have only like a few places where you can actually cross to go into Bradenton or Sarasota. That's 75, 301, or US 41. Right now we're in the off season, but even in the off season, you can see me sitting here in traffic. So during the winter time when the snowbirds come down, it's considerably more busy. So one of the most inconvenient things about living in the Palmetto area is the traffic nightmare that it is. One of the good things, I guess, is that you have Interstate 75 and you also have 275. Many people are moving to Palmetto because they work in St. Petersburg, which is only 35 minutes away in theory if there's no traffic. but in reality, it can be up to an hour to get into St. Petersburg. And I've seen where they closed the bridge down due to an accident, and then it can take an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to St. Petersburg. So in theory, it should take 30 minutes to get to St. Petersburg, and that's why a lot of people have been actually building suburban houses here in Palmetto, because with proximity to Sarasota, Bradenton, St. Petersburg, and Tampa, Palmetto serves as a good commuter suburb. For cities that are already kind of not that expensive, and I think that's kind of where the problems begin when it comes to Palmetto, is that it's an affordable suburb for places that are already not that expensive for Florida standards. So we're heading south on 41. Behind us is Tampa. To the right of us is St. Petersburg via 275. And straight ahead, we're driving into Palmetto. There's a lot of industry here, and there's also the Manatee County Jail. That's why you'll see a lot of police officers cruising through here. There's quite a bit of infrastructure in Palmetto. I mean, for one, it's a transportation hub. You have Port Manatee. The locals call the Manatee County Jail the Port because it's next to the port. So that's why you hear the term the Port in Bradenton usually means going to jail. So if you're in the Bradenton area and you hear somebody say you went to the port, it means you went to jail because the Manatee County Jail is right next to the port. It's kind of a local slang that took me a while to figure out, but I finally figured that part out. Regardless, you have 275 going to St. Petersburg. You got Interstate 75, Interstate 4 branches off of Interstate 75 up here. You got 301 and US 41. So a lot of major roads converge here. You also have the Manatee River. You have some railroad. You have a lot of transportation hubs here. So this area serves as a great place for transportation, and that's why many people that live here work driving semis or for large distribution centers. In fact, there's a Manatee County Sheriff Police car right there coming back from the port. So in that aspect, Palmetto is good for poor people because you have all these jobs in transportation. So if you're a low-income earner, there are some great benefits to Palmetto. I mean, there's a lot of jobs here in these transportations, and that even influences me as an Uber driver, where I'm constantly picking up people here who drive semi-trucks. They can't park it where they live, so they park it somewhere else. On this particular day, I had at least 2 people that were driving semi-trucks that were my Uber passengers, so it affects, it trickles down into other people as well. At the end of the day, there is great infrastructure and transportation jobs here, and that is good for regular working class people, those who work, let's say, at a warehouse. And, there's a little bit of economical injustice in the United States by racial demographic, and I think for Hispanics and for blacks, there are opportunities here. Now, when you look at Palmetto, there's a huge income difference between the whites, blacks, and Hispanics here. And that's very notable in Palmetto. It isn't notable everywhere else in this metropolitan area. For example, in Sarasota County, you have the best incomes for Hispanics of all of Florida's large urban counties. That's a good analytic. Here in Palmetto, it's actually pretty disparaging of a difference. So yeah, there's opportunities here, but are they evenly distributed? I always thought that there are jobs here. There's just not good paying jobs. But in a state like Florida, where opportunities are limited for poor working class people, despite the disparaging analytics of analytics, I do believe for a poor working class person, the cost of living and jobs here are fairly good. In fact, on this particular day, I decided to come here to make some money. This right here is 275. If you were to take that off-ramp we just passed in 15 to 16 minutes, you could be in downtown St. Petersburg. And as you get off the exit, more warehouses, more jobs, more semi-trucks, more opportunities. This house here is being built. You can see the truck is carrying the materials. So there's a lot of economical movement in this area. There has been a lot of growth, and I think Palmetto is going to continue to grow. One of the great things about Palmetto is that a lot of the new construction here isn't just single family homes. There's actually a lot of warehouses and other commercial and industrial applications going in, and you don't see that everywhere in Florida. So this is a good economical indicator for poor working class people who need a guaranteed job at a warehouse. If you've been watching my live streams, you may have noticed that there's actually quite a few delivery jobs over here, And when I do food delivery, I almost end up in Palmetto or Parrish. That's the northern side of Manatee County. And that is because this area is what we call a food desert. That means that there's just not enough restaurants and services for the growing population, which means a lot of people actually have food delivered to them, and they have to pay an exorbitantly high price because the restaurants could be in Sarasota or Bradenton, as far away as 45 minutes away. And of course, that means that people are paying sometimes more money for the delivery fee than they are for the food. As absurd as that sounds, you may save a lot of money while buying a house here, but the fact that it's a food desert also trickles down into other expenses. So I always thought you're better off paying $100,000 more to buy a house in Bradenton or Sarasota and not have to deal with the traffic congestion, the food desert, and other complications that exist here in Palmetto and Parrish as well. These far fast-growing suburbs that practically offer nothing more than roads, buildings, and houses, but there isn't really any essence. There isn't any restaurants, things to do. All of that means you're commuting quite a bit, and that commute is money, it's time, it's gas, it's mileage. It adds up quite a bit to the point where I do believe that even though you can buy a brand new house here for $100,000 less than somewhere else, I think in the long term, you're going to pay that in, well, just distance and expenses to travel. Now, these little country roads can get pretty freaking busy in the afternoons, particularly during the winter and the snowbirds are down. There just isn't enough like base level infrastructure. There's a lot of regional infrastructure, but these roads are just not really meant to handle all these new communities that are popping up left and right. These communities are advertising prices that are considerably less than somewhere else. But again, just calculate your all your expenses, from your HOA fee, your commute time being longer, your food having to get delivered. I really do feel like in the long run, whatever money you're saving up front in your housing cost could actually just go to other expenses related to the area. For one, the aggravation of dealing with these roads. These used to be country roads in the middle of nowhere, and now they have to handle the traffic for all these emerging and fast-growing communities, and there's no end in sight. And keep in mind, yes, there is regional infrastructure here, like all the roads we talked about, but there's very few exits. For the most part, when you're in city level, it's bumper to bumper. They are going to build another bridge connecting Palmetto to Bradenton, but there's no real telling when that's going to happen. It's probably years and years down the road, but already people are speculating about it, which means price appreciation, considering that another bridge could easily facilitate access into Bradenton, reducing travel times by as much as 22 minutes, depending on which route you're taking, which time of the year. The thing that sucks is that there's already, anticipation, appreciation, and expectation of that, and all the speculation around that kind of, almost steals from the value that it's going to add, which is what happens many times in these communities in Florida, is that even before the infrastructure comes in, even before the facilities come in, there's already price appreciation based on speculation of the things that could come eventually. Sometimes those things don't come, but you still get stuck with the price tag of the notion that those things could exist. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's real estate speculation for you. A huge problem in this area. Like for now, all these communities are going in. A lot of the work, if not all of it, was being done by undocumented people. Within the next few years, who knows how many of these projects are going to come to a complete stop, stall out, or at least slow down significantly because now they don't have workers. And they're probably not going to have buyers either because the economical flow of this area has taken a real nosedive. That's probably a topic for another video. The point being is things really aren't looking up too well for Florida. Does that mean that little by little these construction sites aren't going to get going? They will. It's just going to take a lot longer, perhaps, than what people anticipated. And perhaps a slowdown doesn't mean an end or a cutoff to these growing communities, but it could definitely mean that things are going to slow down significantly. I'm personally not going to make any catastrophic predictions for Palmetto. I do feel that things are going to continue to come in, maybe at a slower pace, but things are going to continue to improve here. You're going to start to see more communities being built, and people are going to build their lives around this community that seemingly has very little to offer. You have to also consider that much of Palmetto flooded during the last hurricanes, And now people know that those properties that flooded aren't really worth much. Now, this area has kind of been devoid of these types of destruction for so many years that people forgot about the potential for that. Now, the real estate prices kind of reflected that compared to other parts of Florida, but now the new buyers are also aware that this can happen here. I mean, there was huge flooding in Ruskin, Rubonia, along coastal parts of Palmetto. So people now are kind of aware that there is a flood risk in this area with hurricane storm surge, and that will definitely affect the value of a lot of these properties, particularly those that have already flooded. And this is something that buyers should be aware of, and that probably reflects some of the lower prices that you see on the internet for Palmetto. Urban planning in this part of Manatee County is a nightmare. It's very similar to what's going on in East Tampa. You got residential, you got commercial, industrial, you got mobile homes, you got agricultural. You have all these different zonings that are right up against each other. Sometimes on one street, on one side of the road, you got commercial. On the other side, you got a mobile home. Then you got a new gated community. So the zoning here is a mess. And this will indefinitely mean that the real estate values here are never going to appreciate past a certain level. And that is because nobody really is going to pay top dollar to live behind a warehouse. So a poor working class person will always want to live near a warehouse, but nobody's going to pay top dollar. So the real estate appreciation of your investment in Palmetto probably isn't going to be considerate because of the zoning or the lack of planning in urban development here. As you can see, there's some new houses over there. But on the other side of the street, you got some commercial or industrial. All this doesn't lend itself very good for price appreciation. And while regular working class people will be moving into these areas, you can't really expect these prices to soar because the urban planning is a huge mistake. And then the older communities are going to flood because all the newer construction has to meet a newer code. And this just creates a never-ending cycle of contrast neighborhoods, bad urban development that will eventually mean that living in Palmetto is somewhat of a nightmare in different aspects and ways. It doesn't really feel like a community. It just feels like a place to live. And this nightmare starts in Palmetto, it moves into Riverview, and it's most pronounced in East Tampa. It's a nightmare in Bradenton as well. It's just absolutely horrific urban planning. I don't know why Manatee County, particularly up here, has not planned very well. I know in other parts of Manatee County, like Lakewood Ranch and Parish, there's been better urban planning, but here there's just no control. There's no filter. Anything goes. And it's probably because it's a low-income community, so, developers can get away with it. And there's been a lot of agricultural land rezoning as well to contribute to that. That's probably not going to happen in Lakewood Ranch, for example. In Lakewood Ranch, there is a lot of industrial parks, but they have to have landscaping, they have to have lakes, they have to aesthetically look a certain way. They can't just look like a bunch of giant boxes. So it's not that you can't have these things together. It's that there's a certain level of urban planning that should go into this that in the case of Palmetto simply hasn't. And keep in mind that Palmetto just kind of connects into that mess of East Tampa. One giant utilitarian area, not much thought is given to aesthetics in this part of Florida when it comes to urban development, and that creates somewhat of an urban eyesore. There is an Acapulco in Palmetto, and it's probably the nicest one I've ever seen. This is kind of a nice Latin supermarket that exists here in the Bradenton area. This one, by far the nicest one I've seen anywhere. Palmetto has a Walmart as well if you're a little bit more bland. But if you want to get your supermarket stuff done, the Acapulco here is gorgeous. The prices are exceptionally low. It's far cheaper than Walmart or Publix. And they also have warm food at the other end of the store. So if you like affordable shopping, the Acapulco is definitely a great place to get affordable groceries, particularly if you're into international foods, tropical supermarkets. This place does very well for me. It's probably the nicest Acapulco in the entire metropolitan area with a wide array of Latin foods. There's a lot of Cubans here, there's Haitians, there's Jamaicans, there's Mexicans, there's Venezuelans. This is a very diverse community, and a good balance of black and white. So it's a very diverse community, and that means that you have culturally a few things going on. Now, I'm going to be honest, when it comes to restaurants, I have had bad experiences in Palmetto. They do have a restaurant inside the Acapulco, and that is where we ate today. I did think the Cuban pizzas were kind of expensive, but hey, I've never seen a Cuban pizza at a store like this, so I had to try it. I was able to get a lot of really good stuff for good prices, so at least the cost of getting your groceries here seems reasonable with the Acapulco. They're going to have Cuban bread, Haitian bread, stuff that, if you're Latin or Caribbean, you want to have those things, you can't get them anywhere. There's a Puerto Rican food truck. There isn't any good Cuban food here. There's a few Cuban restaurants. I've tried them and haven't liked them. I mean, the real thing to say about Palmetto is I think almost every single time I've eaten here, I've got sick. So I can't really have incredible things to say about Palmetto based on my experiences with dining here. In fact, I think Palmetto and Parrish are, like I said, food deserts. And the fact that there's always all these food deliveries going out here kind of testifies to the fact that it is really a food desert. It isn't so much that there doesn't exist options, it's just that they're not really good options. I also think that maybe the problem with why I've got sick every time I eat in here is that maybe the water lines are very old, decrepit. Perhaps there's something of contamination in the water lines or broken pipes that haven't been repaired right. There's definitely something with the water quality out here maybe, because every single time we've eaten in Palmetto, we've got sick. I've tried, I think, 5 or 6 times now, and every single time I've eaten in Palmetto, I've got sick, which makes me think that perhaps there's something wrong with the city's water lines. I'm not sure what the deal is, but it does kind of feel like a food desert in a lot of ways. So keep that in mind if you're moving here, that this isn't exactly the most prestigious dining options type of area. And don't try to argue with me on that. I mean, just last Sunday during a live stream, we made $25 an hour bringing food up this way because there are so many people ordering from Sarasota and Bradenton. So don't give me that crap. It's part of the problem with living here. If you're heading north out of Palmetto, there's this roundabout that leads to nowhere. In fact, if you go to the right, you can see that part of the roundabout dead ends into a cattle field. By the way, the cops like to hide there and catch people driving erratically. The thing about Palmetto is that there's still great rural communities out here. This little stretch of road hasn't been developed yet, and you'll see a raccoon lash out across the street in broad daylight. It's probably on Fent or something. I don't know why a raccoon would be out in the daytime, but you'll see up ahead where that beautiful farmhouse is on the left, a raccoon's about to come flying out of that house, and we almost hit it. We didn't hit it. There's a video right there. I slam on the brakes and barely missed that raccoon. Not sure why it's out and about, but this is kind of what Palmetto used to look like on the outskirts. It used to just be kind of a lot of cattle fields, but with development and all these warehouses and new communities going in, it's all starting to change rapidly. I mean, what a mess. You can see here mobile homes on one side of the road, agriculture on the other, and then you hop on over into a nice newer community or older community. Nonetheless, it's a zoning nightmare that aesthetically looks horrendous. So now you got houses here out of nowhere. So that's kind of the most frustrating thing about Palmetto. And then all of that has to share this little country road. It's not a 2-lane highway anywhere near here. This little community here, I picked up a passenger back in this little area, and he was working back in Bradenton, so that's what we're doing right now. A lot of people have suspended licenses. Other people don't have a car. A lot of people just got out of jail. Some people are undocumented. And you get elderly people going to doctor's appointments too. That's usually the typical thing in the daytime. And then at nighttime, it's mostly just people trapping herb out of the Uber, believe it or not. It's disappointing to Uber drive here at night because, like I said, probably 1 in 3 people you get is moving the pack on Uber. They're not making a lot of money. If they were, they'd at least tip you. You can tell by the colorful houses back here that it's kind of a diverse community. Probably a lot of people from the Caribbean islands. I'm pretty sure only people from the islands or the hood paint their houses baby blue or purple, or lime green, or neon green with green trim. And at the end of the day, there's some colorful houses back here. After what seemed like an eternity, our passenger finally came out of the house, and now we're heading into Bradenton. I think this guy was just going to work. Palmetto has a lot of great things going for it too as well. I mean, one of the greatest things that it has is proximity to downtown Bradenton, and you'll see how easy it is. We're going to drive right through the city and then boom, across the bridge, and we're in downtown Bradenton. Accessing Bradenton's downtown from like Lakewood Ranch or from other parts of Bradenton can be quite a nightmare, particularly during daytime traffic. Now, you can't really see it from today's video, but in the wintertime, please believe that crossing those bridges during peak hours is a nightmare. I remember last year, I was literally stuck for 26 minutes in one single spot on the Green Bridge. So don't let this light traffic this time of year fool you. If you move here during the winter, you're going to deal with a lot of traffic. So this is what it looks like during the absolute peak of the dead season. If you're thinking about moving to this area, don't let this fool you. It's going to get a lot more chaotic. And I'm starting to think that even maybe the homeless people are also snowbirding, because I feel like there's more homeless people in the winter as well. It seems like during the winter there's just an explosion of homeless people as well. I think a lot of homeless people actually take buses from up north to Florida in the winter, so there'll be a lot more cars, people, and way more homeless people here in the winter. It's going to look very busy and probably very aggravating if you have to commute through this area. In fact, forget about getting dinner in Bradenton. If you live out here, it's bumper to bumper during the winter. Now, everything to the right of us is like West Palmetto, and down that way there are some gorgeous houses. Historic, beautiful houses, and the prices are really good. Sadly, a lot of them had extensive hurricane damage. Some of them flooded. Some of them had the roofs torn off. I think during the Hurricane Aftermath video series that I did, I covered a lot of what happened back there. And it was really heartbreaking because there are beautiful houses, beautiful communities, and that is a good area to live in. So anything like west of downtown Palmetto, there really aren't that many rough neighborhoods back that way, other than perhaps like that giant trailer park, but mostly down that way, it's really nice. Now, Palmetto does have a downtown. We just passed it to the right of us. It's kind of a street that parallels the street we're on right now. We didn't go in there on today's video, but it is kind of a cute downtown. A few restaurants and bars and stuff. It's nothing like downtown Bradenton. And there's also a nice restaurant on the water. I get passengers from there all the time. It's like a beautiful restaurant there. So yeah, there's somewhat of a downtown to Palmetto, and there is kind of like a main street there with like big older buildings and stuff. It ain't much. It's something, but it ain't much. For the most part, most people that live in Palmetto, when they want to have a night out, they go to downtown Bradenton. And I've talked to law enforcement and stuff, and one of the biggest problems that they have in Bradenton is the people from Palmetto that go to downtown Bradenton. In fact, one of the reasons why people are afraid of going to downtown Bradenton and enjoying nightlife in downtown Bradenton is because the trashy crowds from Palmetto go to hang out in downtown Bradenton, making it kind of more unattractive than what it already is. And let's not forget that Bradenton's not the most glamorous city in the world, so when Bradenton thinks you're trashy, you have a problem. But regardless, like a lot of people, even tourists, have told me that they've came to party to downtown Bradenton at night, and they're like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. In fact, most of the locals know not to do nightlife in downtown Bradenton because it's mostly, and again, the name says Palmghetto, that's what most people call it. It's the ghetto trashy crowd from Palmghetto that goes to downtown Bradenton that makes downtown Bradenton scarier than what it is on its own merits. But regardless, that's kind of one of the upsides of living in Palmetto, that you cross that bridge and boom, you're accessible to downtown Bradenton, where you can go to your court hearings, get a divorce, you can talk to your probation officer, visit a friend that's going to court, I don't know, buy some crack off a homeless person on a street corner, whatever the crap you're doing. And believe it or not, you would think with as much criminal activity as exists in Palmetto, you wouldn't believe how many people from Palmetto have to come to Bradenton to get their work and vice versa. I mean, it's like these dealers don't communicate with each other. It's like all night long you're bringing stuff to or from one side of the bridge to the other. And as an Uber driver, you're wondering, why don't these people just figure this out? I mean, I brought 10 people back and forth. They're all doing the same exact thing. Is there any coordination amongst these criminals? Probably not. Probably not many brain cells between them. I mean, just the notion that somebody would trap out of a freaking Uber is frustrating to me. And again, if you're an Uber driver in this metropolitan area, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But hey, one of the big advantages of living, in Palmetto is that you can get your illegal substances here in downtown Bradenton, or maybe your customer base is in Bradenton. However the crap it works, there's a Bradenton Palmetto connection. I think anything going between Palmetto and Bradenton, it's just going to be bad either way, whether it's legal or illegal. It's just a horrible thing. I actually sent a letter to the Bradenton City Council telling them that they should consider closing the bridge to Palmetto, and then maybe we'll go to downtown Bradenton. But they said it belongs to the state, and they've considered blowing up the bridges themselves and not, closing them down. But they're actually state bridges, and the state of Florida won't do that. But the local people would. If the city of Bradenton owned those bridges, we'd have closed them down a long time ago just to keep the people from Palmetto from coming over here. But unfortunately, no matter how many times we write letters to them and tell them that we should make up a reason or come up with some way if we can close down these bridges and keep these savages from coming over here, it is a state bridge, and well, there's only so much the city can do to keep these people over there in Palmetto. So if you've ever wondered why Palmetto is so much more affordable than other parts of this metropolitan area, we keep the prison jail down there so that baby mamas can live in Palmetto close to their husbands. They can, if you do conjugal visits and all that, he's not far away. So I feel like the fact that the county jail's there already makes it a horrible place, unless your baby daddy's locked up and you want to be near him or whatever the crap. But at the end of the day, it's more affordable because it's a very high crime rate area. A lot of illegal substances moving through there, quite a few homeless people. On this particular day, you can't really tell how many homeless people there are because it's like 100 degrees. But trust me, if it was a cooler day, there'd be hordes of homeless people everywhere. They're just hiding behind the trees or something right now. So look, if you're a redneck or somebody with a criminal record, Palmetto's all right, okay? But if you think you're fancy and you like to go out for sushi and you like to not get robbed in the middle of the night, Palmetto's probably not for you. If you're just a regular working class person with a criminal record, a baby mama, and you want to be close to the prison to visit your homies when they get locked up, perhaps Palmetto will be the perfect place for you. There is great fishing. There is good access to waterways. There's a few very ghetto and trashy beaches as well that aren't really worth mentioning. Easy access to St. Petersburg, that's another thing. I mean, St. Petersburg and Bradenton access are probably like the top reasons why you'd want to be here. So yeah, there are great things about Palmetto, access to all these other larger cities. Do not forget, though, that the reason why some of these houses are affordable is because the propensity for flooding and the propensity for whatever doesn't flood to get stolen. If you by any chance have a disdain for hood rattery, Palmetto is not for you. One of the things that I could see myself with happening if you ever move to Palmetto is sitting at a gas station line waiting to pay for something, hearing somebody on the phone talk about their baby daddy ain't paid child support, somebody else that smells like rectum and herbal essence, and it really has a trashy hood vibe that is probably more than sufficient for me to vomit. And if you feel the same way, perhaps Palmetto's not the place for you. But if you're an Edgar looking to join a gang, or you're just one of those people that just likes the way other people's rectal cavities smell when you're sitting in a line, perhaps Palmetto could work fine for you and your family. Personally, because I'm an Uber driver and unfortunately at night I have got to see kind of the worst side of Palmetto, for me it's kind of difficult to like this place because my experiences here have been overwhelmingly bad. It isn't like you're getting the most educated people here with the jobs you have. I mean, it's people from the hood, rednecks, and kids with Edgar haircuts. That doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for any decency. So if you're classy, consider something like Sarasota. If you're even a little classy, consider something like Bradenton. But if you have absolutely no moral standards and you just want to live somewhere hood where you can get plugged in quick and all that, and not have to go too far to get to work, and perhaps, the baby mama gets locked up, you can go visit her down the road right next to the port and all that, hey, Palmetto might be the place for you. I have a lot of subscribers in Palmetto. I do think that economically there's a lot of opportunity here for hardworking people. It isn't completely economically deprived. There's a lot of things going in. I think more things are going to continue to go in. It would be nice for this area to get a little bit more restaurants so it stopped being a food desert of some sort. I mean, hey, today I met some great people in Palmetto, and I had a great time making new friends while Uber driving in your city today. Not everybody there is horrendous. But unfortunately, man, there are disproportionately way too many people here into criminal activity, and it's made my experiences in the city very unfortunate and somewhat depressing. But hey, maybe that's what you're looking for. Some people might be looking for that. Man, somebody might be straight from the hood, dog. Might just want to be rapping that mug. That's Palmetto, man, aka Palmghetto. If you're watching from Palmetto, thank you for listening to this incoherent rant that ran on for about 40 minutes. And if you're thinking about moving here, I think you're not going to find, you probably won't find a more critical point of view on this city than what you just saw today. And that's good, because if you're moving here, you want to know the good and the bad, and perhaps you need somebody to tell it to you how it is. I mean, for the most part, the people that I know that live here are very content with the affordability of it, with the job opportunities they have, and with the fact that the plug is just right down the road. If you have kids and they're prone to delinquency, you know, if you're a parent, if your kids are good or bad, like, you know, like that one right there, he's cool, that one's all right. Now that one right there, yeah, we can't put him in that environment. So if you're a parent, you know what your kids are like. And if you got one of those kids, like that one right there with the Edgar haircut, yeah, don't move to Palmetto, because believe me, there's plenty of activities for them to engage in out here, and none of them are productive. Now, I like to go to taco trucks late at night. I like to shop at the Acapulco. I personally like ghetto vibes. What I don't like is rude and nasty people. I don't mind hanging out in the hood all day. I'm a very respectful person. You can see by the way I've talked about your town how respectful I can be and all that. But then the problem is, like in Palmetto, you do run the people that are just outright nasty. Like, they're not here for affordability. They're not here for work. They're just stuck here. And those people can be very nasty. And, well, at the end of the day, you'll run into them out there. Driving like maniacs, road raging people, being nasty and rude. You'll run into some pretty nasty people out here. I think disproportionately more than you will in Sarasota or Bradenton. Me, I like places like Oneiko. I'm not sure why I like Oneiko more than Palmetto. Like, if I had to live in the hood, it would definitely be Oneiko, not Palmetto. I'm not sure why. Most people will tell you that Oneiko's a lot worse. And in a lot of ways, it probably is. But I personally like South Bradenton, Oneiko more than I like Palmetto. And I'm not sure why. I've only been in this metropolitan area like 3 or 4 years. And I visited up here a few times before I moved. So I'm not sure why I like Oneiko more. I just like the hood vibe there more. Palmetto seems more like a southern hood. And Oneiko feels more like a South Florida hood. On top of that, it feels more like a Texas or California or South Florida hood. And Oneiko feels kind of the same way. But like Palmetto feels kind of like a deep South hood, so it isn't my personal vibe. It just feels more like an Alabama type hood, and that's just not what I'm into. I'm more into like a South Florida, Texas, California type of vibe. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of Caribbean vibes here. There's Jamaicans, Haitians, and all that, but it still has kind of like a Southern vibe to it. In fact, there's even a plantation here. It's called the Gamble Mansion, and it's owned by the Daughters of the Confederacy. So Palmetto kind of pushes redneck, kind of pushes Southern, and I'm more of a Caribbean vibe. So there is a Caribbean vibe here, but I just feel like in Bradenton hoods on the south side, it feels more Caribbean, and I'm more inclined to that type of hood. But anyways, that's what it is. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. And if you live in Palmetto, don't be mad at me for today's video. I'm just keeping it real with y'all. If somebody's moving out here, they need to know all this crap. You don't want them to be surprised. You don't want people that belong in Sarasota to end up in Palmetto snitching, calling the police, calling the county. Let's give them a fair warning about what they're getting into, man. How would you like if somebody that was supposed to end up in Sarasota ended up in Palmetto, and next thing you know, they snitching on you, dog? Like, I'm doing you a favor with this video, bro. Like, just let me help you out, okay? Let me help you with this video and stop complaining. So if you're from Palmetto, man, I'm not hating on you. Don't take this as me hating on you. I'm trying to keep these snitches out of your hood, man. I'm trying to do you a solid, man.